Hello, MavMind Collective, and welcome to another episode of the HypnoSales Show. Today we're going to be talking about how to handle mixed audiences in your meetings. So if you're like me and you're in a customer-facing role, customer-facing job, whether you're in sales or SE or you're an SDR maybe, or a customer success person, a support person, a professional services, something like that, you probably have had many times where you have a meeting with the customer, client, or prospect, and you realize that, they're from different departments, or there's different levels of the audience, meaning like maybe you have an executive or a couple executives on one side of the table and or in the Zoom, and then you have, because they're always remote now, right? In the Zoom, and then you also have maybe someone that's in the trenches doing the work, like database administrators or some IT folks or something, IT department members. Or it might be people that are technically oriented, technical roles, and then you have business roles, people that are non-technical, strategic roles or something like that. So, how do you handle that, right? I've had this happen to me many times, where I go into a meeting and I'm realizing, wow, there's going to be different expectations, there's going to be different desires and motivations, right? So if you remember, I'm always thinking about hypnosales, right? The hypnotic level of this and what's the subconscious drivers for everyone coming to the meeting. When it's mixed like that, it's like it can be a little bit daunting, because it's like, well, how am I going to present to them and make them all satisfied? How am I going to help all of them feel like they got what they needed out of the meeting? Well, there's different techniques you can use. I have other videos that talk about more specific ones, but I wanted to do this one in general just to say the general approach, the strategy you should take are these three things that I'm going to talk about here, in order to make sure that everyone in the meeting gets everything they need, no matter what motivation or expectation they have. All right, so the first one is the meta expectation. So I have another video that talks about this. You can go watch that one to get the detail, but in general, you want to set the expectation at the beginning of the meeting of how everyone's going to behave. You just set that up, and you set those expectations right up front. And the reason I know this works is because even as a hypnotist, when I'm hypnotizing someone, the more you can explain to the person that's going to be hypnotized, because they've agreed to it, they've asked me to hypnotize them, the more that I can explain it to them, the more they're going to go into a hypnotic trance. Let me say that again. The more I explain to them how hypnosis works, the more likely they are to go into a trance, because their brain has already been primed with how it works. Before I told them that, they didn't know how it was going to happen, except for their own assumptions of how it was going to happen. They had to resort to their assumptions because no one told them what was actually going to happen behavior-wise during the meeting. But if I set the expectation about behavior, or meta, which means expectations about expectations, right? I'm setting the expectations about what we can expect, what the expectations you and I are going to have, how we're going to behave and react to each other, respond to each other. The more I can do that, the more likely they are to react and respond to me that way. So I set it up for my success in that mixed audience scenario that we're talking about here, by setting the meta expectations of how everyone's going to behave. So that's the first thing you want to do, is set those expectations, whatever it is, whatever type of meeting you're having, figure out how you want them to behave, how you're going to behave, and set that up, and make sure they agree to that. And then the second thing is I want to predict the outcome. And I have double quotes around the predict. So what I mean is you want to be a psychic, and you want to predict the outcome. So I'm very famous among my circles for saying at the beginning of a meeting, I don't know if you know this, but I'm psychic, and I'm going to predict how this meeting is going to end. Would you like to hear my prediction? I say that a lot, and I really mean that. I want them to say, yes, I want to hear your prediction. I predict that you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. So it's sort of like setting the meta expectations, but I'm predicting the outcome behaviors too. So this is how we're going to behave at the beginning and during the meeting, and then I'm going to predict how we're going to be behaving at the end of the meeting. So I predict it. I predict that at the end of the meeting, it's going to click, and you're going to connect the dots, and you're going to realize what I've been saying is really the thing that you've been wanting to do this whole time. So what I'm really doing by predicting is I'm future tensing. It's called future tensing, and I'm putting it into the future, so their conscious mind gets distracted by the time, that it's not happened yet. It's in the future, because consciously we understand the concept of time. consciously. Subconsciously, as I've said before in other videos, right? We do not understand. Your subconscious just does not comprehend at all the concept of time. So predicting something's going to happen later, the subconscious just says, okay, I don't even know what that is. So it lets go of that, and then it lets me put into the subconscious. I can plant the seed of what's going to happen. It thinks it's happening right now. So even though logically, consciously, you hear me saying that I'm going to predict this in the future, what I'm really telling you when I'm predicting the outcome is I'm telling you, your subconscious, the outcome is this right now. This is the outcome. What I'm saying is going to happen later, I'm really saying it's going to happen now. So the subconscious then absorbs it and goes, okay, and it already has the outcome. It already has the positive thing. I've already planted the positive thing of what's going to happen at the end of that meeting, but it already sees it as positive right this moment, and every moment forward, I keep it in that happy, I prime it basically into that happy, positive state about the meeting right now. So that's another way you can predict the outcome in order to make sure everyone in the audience, no matter what they're there for, they're going to see the meeting as being positive. And then finally, I assign tasks. So this takes a little bit of practice, but and you have to know your audience. So you don't really want to go blindly and do this without knowing who's in the audience. But if you do, assuming that you do know who's in the audience, and if they're executives or if they're technical or non-technical or whatever, go in and make sure you assign tasks to each one. Doesn't even matter what it is, as long as it's something that makes reasonable sense to them. Like, for example, what I would do often is with an executive, I will say, okay, since you're the VP, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a task during this meeting. As I'm presenting the demo portion, I want you to don't really pay attention so much to the demo as you pay attention to your technical people over here on this side and watch their reaction to my demo. And then I want you asking them questions about what they're getting out of my demo, because they're going to understand, and they're going to get things are going to click in their mind, and they're going to get aha moments about what I'm showing them in the demo. And I want you to watch them, and I want you to ask them what they're seeing, have them explain it to you. Okay, would you do that? And the executives always say, oh sure, I'll be happy to do that. I look forward to seeing what they say. Okay, great. And then you're the technical people over here. When I'm talking about the strategy and the pricing or the whatever other strategic thing, I want you to listen and understand that I'm going to be talking to the executive at that point. So I'm going to need you to watch how he reacts or she reacts when I'm talking about that. And if you think you have some additional information about the strategy level, I would encourage you to speak up. Even though I know you're technical, if you could speak up and let us know, that would be great. Otherwise, you're just going to have to give me a little time to talk with the executive about the strategy, and just be patient during that time. Would that be okay? And so you're basically giving them the task of how you want them to behave, what do you want them to do, during that time when you're talking to each person. So you're basically setting up the behaviors and making sure everyone agrees that they're okay with it being like that. So now there's no doubt, there's no assumptions at all. The meta expectations have been set, you've predicted the outcome, and now everyone knows their task. And believe it or not, subconsciously, when someone gives you a task, it's a lot easier for someone to assign something to you and for you to know what to do during a meeting than to try to figure out on your own what you should be doing. So I like assigning it because that's really what they want. That makes their job way easier, because I've told them what I need them to do during the meeting, rather than just assuming and expecting them to do something. And then if my expectation is different than their expectation, and my assumptions are wrong and their assumptions are wrong, it becomes incongruent. And that's typically why you have problems when you have a mixed audience, when you're presenting or talking with them or working with them, and they're from different departments or different levels, like I said, executive or database admins or technical, non-technical, is because the strategies and the assumptions about the strategies were different, the tactics were different, and the assumptions about the tactics are different, and everyone is just, it just doesn't feel good, and those assumptions lead to really bad subconscious associations. And that's, if they've ever had it with other vendors, they're going to definitely have it with you. So you want to prevent that by following these steps, and just set the expectations, predict the outcome, and always assign them some task, no matter what it is. Just give them a task, and you'll see how effective this is with handling your mixed audiences the next time you have that with your customer, client, or prospect. Anyway, my name is Maverick. I know this was valuable, and I know you want to share it probably, or not. Maybe you don't want to share it with someone else, but I appreciate it if you would. And I thank you for your time, and I will see you on the next episode of the HypnoSales Show. Meanwhile, it's time for you to scroll on to somebody else.